The Sharma family had planned the vacation for months. After so much noise, work, and endless household arguments, they wanted a few quiet days in a wooden cabin deep inside the forest. Mrs. Sharma called it a peaceful retreat. Neha called it a place where no one can disturb me. The husband simply hoped there would be good phone signal. The drive grew narrower as the city disappeared behind them. Tall pine trees began lining the road, and the sky turned gray, even though it was still afternoon. The cabin host had warned them not to arrive after sunset. "The forest gets strange after dark," he had said, smiling too widely. When they finally reached the cabin, the air felt colder than it should have. The house stood alone between the trees, dark wood against darker shadows. A small porch creaked under their feet. The front door opened with a long, tired sound, as if it had not welcomed anyone in years. Inside, the cabin smelled of dust, wood smoke, and something faintly rotten. The living room was simple. A stone fireplace, 2 worn sofas, a round table, and a staircase leading to 3 small bedrooms. Mrs. Sharma immediately disliked the upstairs hallway. "Too narrow," she said. "Feels like a tunnel." The husband laughed and opened the windows. The trees outside were so close they seemed to be leaning toward the cabin. Neha shivered despite the blanket she had brought. Then she noticed something odd. On the wall above the fireplace hung an old painting of the same cabin. But in the painting, the forest behind it was not empty. A tall figure stood among the trees, half hidden by the shadows. Neha blinked, and it was gone. That night, as the family settled in, the wind began tapping against the windows like fingers. The cabin felt less like a shelter and more like something they had stepped into by mistake. The next morning, Mrs. Sharma found a folded piece of paper on the kitchen table. None of them had seen it the night before. It contained 5 rules, written in shaky handwriting. 1. Do not open the basement door. 2. Do not answer knocks from outside after midnight. 3. If you hear someone calling your name from the trees, stay inside. 4. Never look into the back window after dark. 5. If the fireplace goes out by itself, leave the cabin immediately. Mrs. Sharma read the paper twice, then snorted. "Very funny." The husband frowned. "Nobody wrote that last night." Neha looked toward the window. The forest stood still. Too still. No birds, no moving branches, only tall pine trunks stretching into shadow. By noon, they had mostly forgotten the note. The husband went outside to take photos. Neha unpacked the bags. Mrs. Sharma began making tea. For a few brief hours, the cabin felt almost normal. Then, at around 4 p.m., they heard a knock. 3 slow taps at the front door. The husband opened it. No one was there. Only a strip of mud on the porch and a trail of wet footprints leading into the trees. Mrs. Sharma crossed her arms. "Probably a deer." Neha pointed at the mud. "Deer don't wear shoes." The footprints stopped at the edge of the forest and then disappeared, as if whatever made them had stepped into the earth itself. That evening, the fireplace burned low. The family sat together, trying to ignore the silence pressing in from outside. Then the husband heard it first. Someone calling his name, very softly, from the woods. He stood up. "Did you hear that?" Mrs. Sharma shook her head. "Don't be dramatic." But then Neha heard it too. "Neha." The voice was gentle, familiar, almost human. She turned toward the window before remembering the rule. The back window. Her head snapped away too late. A face had appeared in the glass. Not outside the cabin. In the reflection, the face in the glass was not one of theirs. It was pale, stretched thin, with eyes that seemed too close together. Its mouth was smiling, but the smile looked painful, as if the skin itself was being forced into place. Behind it, the reflection showed the forest, and something moving between the trees. The husband rushed to the window and looked outside. No one was there, but the reflection still showed the face. Mrs. Sharma grabbed the tea kettle like it was a weapon. "Close the curtains!" The husband obeyed, but the fabric seemed useless against the feeling that something was already inside the room with them. That night, the knocking began again. This time from the back door, then the side wall, then the roof. The taps moved around the cabin in a slow circle, as if something outside was testing every side at once. The husband held a flashlight, but every time he pointed it toward the windows, the beam caught only tree trunks and darkness. Then the calling started. One voice became two. Two became many. All around the cabin, from different directions, voices whispered the family's names in perfect imitation. Mrs. Sharma's voice called from the trees. The husband heard his own voice under the porch. Neha's voice came from behind the sofa. Neha backed away. "It's copying us!" The fireplace suddenly hissed. The flames dropped, then went out. The room became colder in a second, the kind of cold that made the air feel wet. The cabin seemed to shrink around them. Mrs. Sharma remembered the note and went pale for the first time. "Everyone," she said, her voice tight, "get your things!" The husband tried to relight the fire, but the match went out before it reached the wood. In the darkness, they heard a soft, dragging sound from below the floorboards. Not outside, under the cabin. Something was moving under them. Then a loud thud hit the basement door. Once, twice, 3 times. The rule on the paper flashed in Neha's mind. Do not open the basement door. The basement door stood in the hallway behind the stairs. Until that moment, Neha had not even noticed it. It was painted the same dark brown as the wall, as if someone wanted it hidden. The thudding continued from behind it, stronger now, shaking the frame. Mrs. Sharma whispered, "We leave, right now." But the front door would not open. The husband turned the handle again and again, but it was stuck. The lock felt hot. The window latches were jammed too, all of them. A slow knocking came from the basement door. Then a voice. "Let me out!" It was the voice of a child. Neha froze. "There's a child inside?" Mrs. Sharma looked horrified, but she still grabbed the brass lamp from the side table and held it like an old soldier. The husband shook his head. "No, no way!" Then the basement doorknob turned by itself. The door opened a few inches. Cold air spilled out. A tiny hand appeared in the crack. Then another. From the gap, a pale face lifted upward. Eyes black as wet stone, mouth moving too fast, too wide, like the skin could not contain it. Behind the child, something enormous shifted in the dark. The smell that came from the basement was the same rotten smell they had noticed when they first entered the cabin. It was not mildew. It was not mold. It was something older, something trapped too long. Mrs. Sharma slammed the lamp toward the door, and the flame caught the curtains instead of the figure. The cabin filled with smoke. The husband dragged Neha toward the back window. It was their only way out. Outside, the forest was waiting. Too quiet, too dark. But behind them, from inside the cabin, came one final sound. The child laughing. Then a second voice answered from the woods, and it sounded exactly like Neha. They did not remember much after that, just running, branches scraping their faces, mud under their shoes. The husband shouting, Mrs. Sharma refusing to let go of the lamp even after the fire began. By the time dawn came, they were back on the road, standing beside their burned-up car, staring at the forest line in silence. The cabin was gone. Or at least, it was not where it had been. The woods stood empty and still, as if nothing had ever been there. No smoke, no ruins, no blackened walls, only the pines and the long road home. The husband checked the phone. No signal, no photos, no map location, no trace of the cabin at all. Then Neha noticed something in her bag, the folded rule paper. It had not burned. On the back, new writing had appeared in the same shaky handwriting. You left the door open. Mrs. Sharma snatched the paper, read it, and ripped it in half. For the rest of the drive home, nobody spoke. But on the third night after returning, Neha woke up in her own bedroom and heard something outside the window. A soft knock. 3 taps, slow and patient, and from somewhere in the dark beyond the glass, a child's voice whispered, "Can we come back to the cabin?"